Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a corrupt homeowner association president absolutely hates me for not joining the HOA. He intimidates me into leaving my property by threatening me with a shotgun. It is either joining the HOA or the barrel of the gun. I then arm myself and protect my property and teach him a lesson. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The story starts like this. I have one question and I honestly don't know who it would even be aimed towards, but what the actual hell is going on with HOA presidents in South Africa? I feel like every insane person here decided to start an HOA in their neighborhood and nobody stopped them. Personally, I don't even understand the point of an HOA. Is it to keep the neighborhood safe? Because this place was fine and had no issues without one, but apparently my neighborhood needed one. So the leader of the pack was a corrupt jerk that I'm pretty sure just took the money for himself instead of using it for whatever he said he was going to use it for. I never joined the HOA and did not plan to, especially with his crazy ass in charge. I ended up being the only house that was not part of it though, and the president seemed to take that as a personal challenge and probably also a personal insult. Every time I was out, he would coincidentally run into me and start giving me a speech about how great the HOA is and why me joining it would be a benefit. I was getting tired of hearing his speech and telling him no. I was getting letters, phone calls, visits, and anything else you could think of. This guy must have had the plan to bug me so much that I would pay up and join just to get him off my back. I work hard for my money and was not gonna throw a bunch of it away so he could line his pockets with it. I would honestly rather spend that money on crap I don't need than give it to the guy annoying the hell out of me. He realized it was not working though and decided he was going to switch tactics. I would not tell him bugging me was at a 0, but if it was, then he went from 0 to 100 with nothing in between. So I was eating dinner one night when the doorbell rang. I tried to ignore it, but it kept ringing, so I gave up and went through the door. I knew it was probably something not too important, but it might have been an emergency. You never know, and I don't have a peephole, so I cannot see who is at the front door until I open it. I will give you one guess of who was at the door, and if you guessed anybody other than the HOA president, you have not been paying much attention. This time was different though. This time he had a shotgun in his hands. Him, get out of the house right now. Me, okay, easy, don't shoot, I am moving. I wasn't gonna get shot, so I was listening to what he told me to do. He moved me off of my property and all the way to the street by my truck before he said anything again. Him, you're gonna get in your car and drive away. You don't want to be part of the HOA, then you don't want to be part of this neighborhood. If I catch you by the house again, before you join up, then I'm gonna shoot you. Me, you are actually gonna kill me for not joining? Him, it is up to you. Either pay up or stay away, and I will rent the house to people that want to be part of the community. So I drove away before he got any ideas, but knew that I was not gonna stay away for long. I did not have a weapon and I was not willing to take the chance that he was bluffing about shooting me. I went to hang out with a friend and got a gun off of him. I knew it was not a great idea to have a gun that was not in my name and without going through the proper channels, but I was scared. I did not want to hurt anybody, I just wanted to be able to defend myself if I needed it. I had nowhere else to go and it was legally my property, so I went back home. I guess the HOA president was stalking my house because he was there right away and yelling at me that I didn't listen to him and he was gonna teach me a lesson. I turned around and the shotgun was pointed right at my face. I did not have much of a choice, so I pulled the trigger of the handgun and shot him right in the leg. I was too scared to raise it any higher and honestly was hoping that I would have just shot his foot or even the ground to scare him. He was screaming though, and it did not take long for the ambulance and police to show up. It could have been really bad for me if he decided to lie and say that I came after him because he was the one with a bullet in the leg. He had a shotgun and was on my property though, so any lie he came up with where he was totally innocent would have seemed weird. Instead, he admitted that he threatened me because I was not paying for the HOA, but claimed he was actually going to shoot me. The fact that he threatened and had the gun to me was enough to make what I did self-defense. I did get in a little bit of trouble for having a gun that I shouldn't have, but since it was the first time, I got a very small fine and a warning that next time it would be more serious. I don't think I ever want to shoot a gun again though after seeing up close what happened from it hitting somebody. The HOA president though was gonna get in more trouble than just a bullet in the leg. They looked into his finances and did find that he was stealing the money for himself instead of helping the homeowners, which was a type of embezzlement, I guess. I don't really know the legal terms for it, but that is what I would assume the charge was. So the end result is he had to pay to put money into a fund that would actually help the community in some way. Also, he of course lost his position, and the entire situation made everybody wary of an HOA in general now. The HOA ended up being disbanded and the neighborhood got to vote on what the fund would be for. Now, what gets kind of funny is that without the money, the HOA president had to give up his home and move away. It was like an act from God. A storm came a few weeks later and his old house got semi-destroyed. We decided to use the money to use what used to be his property as a community garden for the neighborhood. The money was enough for a setup and everybody would be a volunteer and grow vegetables that we could all enjoy. It was the exact opposite of the kind of thing he would have done, which made me very happy. If it was not for him trying to go too far, he might have still been getting away with stealing money from people that were too scared to say no or stop paying. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, these HOA presidents from South Africa certainly take it to the next level. While in the American HOAs, there are sometimes some cases where I might understand that people want to live in an HOA or pretty much have no other choice, it seems like in South Africa, you are certainly better off not living in an HOA community or simply moving away for good. Either way, if you enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Either way, let's continue to the next one. This one is titled, HOA Karen fined me $500 for feeding ducks. I covered her yard with bird feed and got her kicked out. So I want to start this wonderful and stinky revenge story off by saying that I truly enjoy my neighborhood and I don't think that I have some kind of monstrous homeowner association. However, there is one lady that is on the HOA board that is certainly the evil Disney villain here. I live in a horseshoe-shaped neighborhood of double condominiums that is inhabited by primarily senior citizens like myself. There are a few young families, but mostly older folks live here. My husband and I had been in our condo for about 3 years when a new woman moved in about 2 doors down from us. Her name was Debbie and she had a snobby and crass tone to her from the very first day I met her. She was easily my age or older and yet continued to color her hair a fake-looking red and would wear it curly and tall on her head like she never left the 50s. Her excessive eyeliner and overlined red lips were also cringy, that's what my granddaughter called her at least. Again, my HOA is not necessarily full of tyrants and for the most part everyone abides by the rules and keeps to themselves, but eventually some drama ensues with new neighbor Debbie. Everything begins with some ducks. That's right folks, ducks. So at the front and center of our horseshoe-shaped neighborhood is a humble-sized pond that many ducks, geese and other birds choose to spend their time bathing, eating and lingering in. I personally think that is cute and I love to watch them float around on the water and tend to their nests on the bank. I had tried to be cordial and make friends with her when I would see her out on our daily walks throughout the neighborhood. However, Debbie never wanted a partner and would speedwalk with her weights like she was in some kind of competition to avoid everyone else. She also had a little yappy dog that no one liked because she would leave it outside at 4:30 AM and let it bark its ever-loving head off. Her direct neighbor is a friend of mine, Louise, that I play cards club with, and she told us about how she attempted to ask Debbie to keep the dog inside that early in the morning, and she proceeded to be rude and shout at Louise, telling her to mind her damn business and slam the door. Considering everyone in our neighborhood has strived to be polite and help each other, this woman sticks out like a sore thumb among the rest of us. Louise attempted to take the issue with the dog to the HOA board and found out that Debbie was the newest member somehow. That is just great. Do we need some lady like her handing out fines now? Louise had to drop the issue as she didn't want to have more problems with Debbie and her yappy dog. So a few months passed and everything was mostly normal, but then spring came and there was an abundance of ducks at the pond. The maintenance crew had forgotten to put the fake floating alligator heads in the water to deter them from taking up residence there. I honestly did not even think that the ducks could be a big deal at all, and for the most part they were not until an angry Debbie got involved. I had a partial stale loaf of bread that I didn't want to go to waste, so I thought that I would go down to the pond and toss some of it to the ducks and their babies. My granddaughter and I had a blast handing bread to our feathered friends. They quacked happily and circled around us asking for more until a startling scream erupted and caused us and the poor ducks to jump. To be honest, I thought that she had fallen down her deck steps and broken her hip because the shouting was so uncalled for. Her volume is truly impressive though, because she could be clearly heard from her home, which was about 4 houses north of the pond. "What do you think you're doing feeding those nasty creatures?" she screamed from her wooden deck. Debbie then marched down her steps and stormed towards us, waving her arms at the ducks to startle them, and then she whirled on around us. "Stop feeding them! You need to leave," she shouted some more. "These animals are not even supposed to be here, and you're only encouraging them to stay and crap all over the neighborhood." I was so stunned for a moment that I did not speak right away. We're just giving the ducks some bread, Debbie." Debbie did not like that and stepped up aggressively, almost getting in my face. "I don't care what you're feeding these disgusting, disease-ridden animals, but it needs to stop." She pointed at the ducks with her curved, arthritic finger, glaring at them like they had personally done something to her. My granddaughter was about 14 at the time, and she has never been the type to hold her tongue. "You need to get out of my grandma's face right now." She stepped up and wedged herself in between the two of us, firmly standing her ground. "The ducks are not hurting anybody, and you need to be the one that leaves." She raised her chin to Debbie, and this filled the woman with a rage that I could see bubbling up to the surface. "Oh, I see. You have your little granddaughter to stand up for you." She turned on her heel and headed back down the sidewalk to her house, making sure to dramatically step around piles of duck poop that was not even there. "We will see what the HOA says about this," I heard her shout as she stormed off, telling her little yapper to shut up as she approached the back door. I was truly upset, but certainly not shaken by this woman's grotesque attitude towards the ducks and myself. I was proud of my granddaughter for standing up to her. My son had raised her to be strong and independent. I did not think too much of the incident, but had a good time telling the stories to my ladies at the card club. I honestly assumed nothing would come of her threat with the HOA until I received a letter about 2 weeks later, fining me $500 for feeding unapproved wildlife. And well, $500 is pretty steep, especially for tossing some ducks a little stale bread. I could not believe it until I finished reading the whole page and noticed one of the signatures at the bottom was none other than Debbie's. Okay, now she has crossed a line. It is one thing if you want to complain about the whole thing, but to actually fine me for it is asinine. When I called and spoke with another board member, they said that they would not remove the fine. Unluckily for Debbie, I grew up with 3 brothers and they were always trying to prank each other. Something that I remembered my oldest brother doing once was leaving a trail of pig feed to our other brother's truck so that the swine would climb in and make a mess of things. What a good idea. I decided to buy some more old bread from the bakery along with some tasty birdseed and feed. My granddaughter and I went outside very early in the morning and tossed bread all over her yard and made a trail of birdseed that led from the pond to her house. We were not even finished before the ducks were already marching in a group over to Debbie's property, preparing to eat and crap all over the place. We posted up with some coffee and breakfast in my garage and waited. The morning was beautiful anyway and the sunset was guaranteed to be perfect. Or I guess rather the sunrise. Anyway, what a great day for revenge. It was not too long before the yapper was let outside and you could hear it run back in, yipping over the ducks, chasing it from their food and babies. This must have alerted Debbie to something being wrong because it was only a minute later when we heard another impressive scream from her. The words were not really audible and I was laughing too hard to care anyway. She was in her yard shouting nonsense and swinging a broom around for about 20 minutes before she gave up and realized that the ducks were not going anywhere until they were content. The situation tickled me to death and my granddaughter and I spent most of the day laughing about it, but the revenge was even sweeter than I could have actually imagined. Apparently, the ruckus that she created screaming and hitting the ducks with her broom did not impress her fellow board members or the surrounding neighbors. She was let go from the HOA board and ended up selling her house about 6 months later. Seriously, everyone was happy considering anyone who met her seemed to leave with a bad taste in their mouth. She was rude and cruel and a bad neighbor. Our peaceful neighborhood is back to normal with happy neighbors and ducks to be fed. Not sure where Debbie moved, but I really hope there is no pond nearby. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am glad that this story had a happy ending and that Debbie hopefully moved far away. I guess some people simply can get upset about pretty much everything, even if it is just feeding cute little ducks. Anyway, if you enjoyed the HOA story, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please also turn on the bell to not miss any videos. And the last one is titled, I complied with the manager. When I was in grad school, about 15 years ago, I was working nights and weekends in a convenience store. It also happened to be the first time the fuel prices shot up to around $4 per gallon in America. Because of this, there were quite a few people who pumped gas and drove off, prompting our company to institute a pay-before-pumping policy. The company was a small regional chain of gas stations and convenience stores in a largely rural area. They were concerned about any loss, so much so that in the company's newsletter they announced firing someone for regular theft from the store. The theft in question was when an employee refilled her fountain drink while on duty. Another example was that we were required to do money drops anytime we had more than $200 in the register. Another employee was fired because she was robbed at gunpoint and had not done a money drop. There was approximately $205 in the register at the time. So when this new policy came out, I was not about to risk my job over someone filling up and driving off with a tank full of gas on my watch. My manager was really good about working around my needs for class, research, etc. while working on my degree, so I put up with this and wanted to keep my job. One night I am working and someone pulls up to get gas. The machine beeps letting me know someone is trying to fuel up before paying. I won't pre-authorize because policy. Customer comes in and demands I let him fill up before paying. I explain the policy and he lights into me with perhaps every exploitive he knows. I would like to say I was professional, but I returned his hospitality. The next day when I show up for work, my manager is waiting for me, clearly unhappy. He is a regular customer and we want to keep him happy. I explained to her that, regular customer or not, I was not willing to risk my job over a drive-off when people are getting fired for losing such little sums of money. Manager states, I see what you are saying, but you have to learn which rules to follow. Now, she has been with the company for about 15 years, she could get some leeway. I had been there less than a year, I had no leeway. So I asked her, please put in writing which rules I am expected to follow and which rules I do not. Or put in writing which customers are exceptions to policy and which ones are not. Until then, I'm following all of the company's policies. I'm not surprised that she would not put that in writing. Fast forward about a week, I am working solo on a Sunday afternoon when someone I've never seen before comes in and yells at me for not pre-authorizing his pump. I explain the company policy and that he would have to prepay just like everyone else. Customer claimed he was with corporate and that he should be allowed an exception. I informed him that if he really was from corporate, he would know about this policy and would expect me to follow it. I even pointed to the policy statement in the window for him to read. The customer yelled at me and stormed off before I could reply. Turns out this stranger was from corporate and even the VP of the company. He called to complain to my manager about my refusal to let him pump first. She repeated my arguments as to why I refused to risk my job and that he should be glad to know they have such loyal employees. VP said that policy was meant for regular customers and not for employees. She replied, please put into writing which rules we are expected to follow and which ones we are not.